Evidence supports that in 1996, U.S. intelligence manipulated and murdered another musical icon, entertainment megastar Tupac Amaru Shakur. Before his early death at the age of 25, Tupac had produced enough songs for over a dozen CDs, had 5 albums which topped the Billboard sales charts, and had starred in 6 films. Mainstream media censored much of Tupac's history. For example, at the age of 18, Tupac headed the New African Panthers, which tried to replicate his mother's Black Panthers, and was active in 8 cities. Given that U.S. intelligence whistleblowers said their programs continued under different names, it's clear Tupac would have been targeted as a leftist black leader.
Now, we're speaking with Brother Tupac Shakur, who was the national chairman of the New African Panthers. My name is Bomani Bakari. The program is indeed Round Midnight.
I believe that the New African Panthers are about serious freedom, really reaching out.
Along with his mother, Afeni, many other former Black Panthers, including Watani Tayehimba, mentored Tupac throughout his life. Tayehimba was a co-founding national security director of the New African People's Organization, NAPO, and became Tupac's business manager. NAPO's national chairman, Chokwe Lumumba, became Tupac's national lawyer. Between the time of Tupac's first and second solo CD release, Tupac and his imprisoned stepfather, Mutulu Shakur, devised their thug life plan for Tupac to develop a gangsta persona as part of a plan to appeal to gangs, then politicize them. This was part of Tupac's extended Panther family's work at getting the nation's largest warring gangs, the Bloods and the Crips, to call peace truces with each other and engage in leftist activism. The gang peace truces spread nationally, and Tupac directly aided them, helping bring together gang leaders at gang truce picnics. Tupac and Mutulu also developed a code of thug life to help decrease the damage gangs do to their communities. The Young Lords influenced New York's largest gangs, the Latin Kings, to drop drug dealing and become activists.
The Code of Thug Life is a revolutionary document. Go online and look at Tupac's Code of Thug Life. He began to broker the peace between these gangs. If gangs are allowed to flourish because they're doing the job of the oppressor and in terms of eliminating young black men, that's what neocolonialism is. I don't have to come in as the oppressor in my uniform, with my army, with my people who look different, and kill you and lock you up. What I can do is create a psychological climate of self-hatred. I can pour in the guns and pour in the drugs and step back and let you do it to yourselves. And nobody's seeing where it's really coming from. And so Fred Hampton got killed in Chicago for the same thing. He had taken the Young Lords, the toughest, best organized, largest street gang, Puerto Rican street gang in Chicago, and helped them become a revolutionary organization called the Young Lords Party. Went to school on high waters, were crossing through gang borders, breakdancing on the block just to count a few quarters.
Catherine Austin Fitts, a Wall Street insider who had also worked as Assistant Secretary of Housing under the first President George Bush, detailed how vastly street drugs prop up various corporate stocks. She evolved politically and tried to expose this, such as in this article in Narco News, in which she details how several street-level drug dealers each make at least several $100s a day, 250 days a year, equaling a net of at least $100,000 a year for their supplier. Fitts said this money is laundered by establishments dealing in cash. These include restaurants and banks who hide the cash in their accounting ledgers as money received legitimately, and then return the money to the higher-level dealers in a way that makes their money appear legally earned. Fitts said that these banks and restaurant chains on the stock exchange increase their stock values by 20 to 30 times and turn a $100,000 profit into a $2 to $3 million profit of stock value. Thus, the radicalization of the 3,000-member Latin Kings alone cost the money launderers billions of dollars.
One of the ways that we've financed the growth of multinational corporations and big banks, and the rise of the Dow Jones is by selling narcotics to our children. It's one of the most profitable businesses in America. And towards the end, we were discussing the fact that the Department of Justice estimates that the United States is the leader in laundering organized crime profits of about $500 billion to $1 trillion a year. So I asked the audience, what would happen if we stopped being the worldwide leader in laundering $500 billion to $1 trillion a year? And they said, well, you know, if we stopped, our mutual funds would go down in price, the stock market would crash.
President Bush, the former CIA director, had rallied massive federal forces against the gang truce movement, and researchers published evidence that police framed gang peace truce leaders, as this excerpt of Mike Davis's article in the New Left Review details. Congress had also formed a committee looking into the dangers of radical political rappers. The prison system transferred Mutulu Shakur into the country's most maximum security prison due to his influence through Tupac.
Life as I knew it was about the grind, while Pops was in the pen just doing his time.
Several attempts were made on Tupac's life, including 2 allegedly off-duty Atlanta police officers using a gun stolen from an evidence room to shoot at him. Much evidence supports that Haitian Jacques Aignant was an undercover police agent, including a long rap sheet of charges that were all dismissed. Aignant set up Tupac's sexual liaison with Ayanna Jackson, where she accused him of forced sex on her second sexual encounter with him. Police erased taped evidence helping exonerate Tupac. While Tupac was found not guilty of all major charges, a jury did find him guilty of touching her butt against her will after consensual sex. For that, a judge gave Tupac a sentence of up to 4 years in prison while awaiting appeal in December of 1994. U.S. intelligence appeared to take a greater role in manipulating Tupac during his 11 months in jail and 11 months out. First, they practiced penal coercion on him, which involved extreme psychological manipulation techniques. They coupled this with COINTELPRO tactics to instigate the East Coast versus West Coast rap war between Tupac and his rapper friend Biggie Smalls. And they coerced him to join the music label Death Row Records while still in jail.
Lady Justice is blind, can't see our pain. Ain't do a damn thing when my brother was slain.
Death Row had dozens of police officers working at all levels of their company, particularly Reggie Wright Jr., whose father, Reggie Wright Sr., headed the Compton area's police gang division. When investigating, police detective Russell Poole asked about the purpose of the police officers in Death Row Records. His superior said they could be considered covert agents. Police reports stated that Death Row trafficked drugs and guns, but were never charged. Death Row employees said Knight tried to end the gang peace truce, and evidence supports Death Row aided the murder of Tupac. Death Row also produced the most negative Tupac songs, which promoted weed and alcohol while also exacerbating the East versus West rap war. Georgetown law professor Michelle Alexander wrote The New Jim Crow about how U.S. intelligence has contributed to the mass incarceration of blacks through long jail sentences for nonviolent drug offenses, such as marijuana possession. The following are excerpts from the award-winning filmmaker Nick Broomfield's movie Biggie and Tupac. Broomfield presented Detective Poole's press conference about his superiors blocking his investigation, as well as his beliefs that his fellow cops aided in Tupac and Biggie's murders. Detective Poole had presented reports on Death Row's drug trafficking. He also cited the police officers in Death Row, including its security director, former cop Reggie Wright Jr., whose father headed a police gang division.
I provided the chief with enough information and evidence that would warrant a full probe, and at that meeting I was ordered not to investigate any further.
Ex-Detective Poole resigned after 18 years on the force when he was prevented from investigating fellow police officers whom he believed to be involved in the murders of Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur.
Because it was no secret that Death Row Records was involved in drug trafficking.
Between 30 and 40 police officers, some of whom are seen here, worked off duty for death row. This is Reggie Wright Sr., Chief Gangs Officer. I'm dealing with this man, Reggie Jr., seen here second left, who's been running death row since Suge Knight's been in prison.
And how the hell it happened, man, I can't explain. So I'ma wipe away the kids, take over the game.
By the summer of 1996, Tupac said he fulfilled his Death Row Records contract and started his own record label, Euthanasia, with its logo seen here on his medallion. Tupac had further majorly decreased his drinking and weed smoking, as noted here by rap mogul Russell Simmons, and he got engaged to Quincy Jones's daughter, Kidada. A death row guard, Kevin Hackey, who was also working for the FBI, apparently turned on the FBI when he warned Tupac not to attend a Mike Tyson boxing match on September 7, 1996 in Las Vegas. Death Row fired Hackey immediately after they learned about the warning. Tupac went to Las Vegas and was shot in a drive-by incident after the fight. Hackey said he had documents to prove the FBI were in Tupac's motorcade and watched when a car pulled up to Tupac's in Las Vegas and fatally shot him. Filmmaker Broomfield reported on U.S. congressional concerns about radical political rap several years before Tupac's death, and on Hackey's statements that the FBI at least watched Tupac's murder.
In 1993, a Senate Select Committee was set up to look into the hip-hop movement. Fear of its inflammatory qualities led to FBI surveillance. Hackey just informed us he was working as an undercover FBI agent a year before Tupac was killed. According to Hackey, FBI agents and ATN agents were in cars just behind Tupac on the night he was shot.
Former New York Black Panther 21 trial target Jamal Joseph eventually became chairman of the Columbia University Film Department while staying close with Afeni and Tupac Shakur. Joseph described his belief that Suge Knight and others at death row influenced Tupac to start smoking weed again. They appeared to do this for U.S. intelligence to both manipulate Tupac and then take him down when he was leaving Death Row Records to become a more sober and positive leader.
He also talked about the fact that he was going to stop getting high. And I know that, when he got out, that when he got into the car on the way to the airport, Suge Knight was like, man, here, have a drink. Here's a blunt. Now, right away, it's manipulation and a different agenda. And so I think that there are people, Suge Knight and other people, that took those things and just go like, okay, we don't want him thinking clearly. But yes, I think he was targeted because he was a Shakur and because they know connected with that name was not just the legacy, but the activism and the ability to organize millions.